Jesus gave it to me. He did. I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus, my Lord, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Amen. Good morning. So good to see you here this morning. We are grateful to God for this another day and grateful to you for your presence this morning. I am so excited about this day and about this week. This is the second day of our E.A. Freeman lecture series, and I am just excited. I have been working since since about 2019, just before COVID, to get Dr. Kevin Cosby here for this lecture series. And we had him scheduled, and then COVID hit, and that pushed it back, and then our schedules couldn't work out. And so through persistence and through your administrative assistant, Dr. Mills, she is wonderful. So please, she really jumped in and helped out, and we are thankful this morning that he is here. He is ready to go. I cheated a little bit. I looked at his PowerPoint last night, and I tell y'all, he and I could sit and have a conversation all day without anybody else in the room. So I am excited about what he has to say to us today. His bio is online. You can read all of that. I don't want to take any more of his time. I want him to come and present himself as he chooses to do. And so, ladies and gentlemen of Kansas, brothers and sisters, help me welcome Dr. Kevin Cosby, pastor of the St. Stephen's Baptist Church of Louisville, Kentucky, and president of Simmons College of Kentucky as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bragg. Thank you. It is an honor, a signature honor to have been asked to come and talks about Black theology. First of all, I'm wondering now, what Baptist convention dares to broach, and that says something about how serious this convention is taking Christian education, right? To expand the borders of our mind beyond thoughts we have always thought, and seeing the Bible through a different set of lenses. I used to have some Malcolm X glasses. I was known for my Malcolm X glasses. But I stopped wearing them because my wife, who is here, she bought some glasses that were like Malcolm X. And I picked them up and I said, no, I got to make a distinction, because while we have the same frames, she has a different lens. She is farsighted, I'm nearsighted. So we have two different lenses. The lens you have, which is your experience, is how you see the Bible, or you should see the Bible through your lens. Unfortunately, because of white domination, Black people have been trained to see everything, not just the Bible, but everything through the lens of white people, which means we're not seeing right. Okay? That is why in 1926, a man named Carter G. Woodson established something called, initially, Black History Week. 1926, the year the church I pastored was started. And he did that because he wanted you to take off those Eurocentric glasses and lens and put on some Black-centric, Afrocentric glasses to see reality. So you're to be commended. I'm gonna jump right into it because what the topic is about. And today I'm going to talk and set the foundation for Black theology. Okay. And the question is, I think that the question, my topic today is Black theology and Black God talk. But the question or the topic that I was given, I believe, if I can remember, was, is there a Black theology? And if so, what are the distinctives? Let me get to that question. I'm going to get to my presentation. Let me respond emphatically. Is there a Black theology? Let me put it this way. Is there an Asian theology? Is there a incarcerated theology? Is there a homeless theology? Is there a Mexican theology? Is there a Nigerian theology? Is there a Native American theology? And the answer is yes. Because theology is simply talking about God. Theos, theo, and you know the word theo and logos. Logos is the Greek word for word. And it's not, when it says word, don't think of word like getting my tools in Sunday school are words. The logos, the Greek concept of logos, is reasoning. So theology is, theo is the Greek word for God, logos is the word for, in the beginning was the word, was the logos. So logos is reasoning. So therefore theology is what? Reasoning about God. That's what it is, okay? And reasoning means you're asking questions, you have interests, you have concerns, all right? Part of being truly liberated is the freedom to reason about God from your experience and from your context. This is what white supremacy is. White supremacy, Anglocentrism, is the universalizing of whiteness so that it becomes the norm and standard for everyone. So let me talk about norm. And it's still in our brains. Normality, white normality. Let me give you an example. When I was younger, good hair was straight hair. Why? Because white hair was the norm. And when you make white hair or straight hair the norm, you have said in effect that when God made you with kinky hair, that God was guilty of creative malfeasance. Straight hair is white folks' hair, and it is not the norm. The first Black millionaire was Madam C.J. Walker out of Indianapolis, Indiana. And Madam C.J. Walker made her millions, helping Black people who were sick transition away from who they were into whiteness. So she had hair straighteners. She had skin bleaches to lighten your skin. Negroes looked like lepers, spots all over the face, because they were trying to bleach their skin to be whiteness. That's a sickness. Why is that the case? Why were we doing that? They were doing that because we had been taught that whites are the norm. And not only are they the norm for themselves, listen to me very carefully, white cultural imperialism made white people the norm globally. Okay, so that wherever you are, you did not embrace your indigenous culture. You took on white culture, white names, white everything. It became the norm, part of liberty, and it is not biblical, which I should show you in a moment. It is anti-Pauline theology, because Paul, you are white supremacy is in alignment with the Judaizers of the book of Acts, who dogged the footsteps of the Apostle Paul. Because you do not have to, Paul's fundamental in Pauline theology is to believe that you do not have to leave your culture to become Christian. That a Gentile does not have to eat Orthodox food, be circumcised, worship on the Sabbath. That to impose that regulations to impose Jewish culture on Gentiles is slavery. Okay? And he literally cusses the Galatians out. Y'all do know that. Don't read if your sensibilities are antithetical to profanity. Don't read Galatians, because he tells them, if anyone comes to you preaching any other gospel, even if it's an angel, tell them to go to hell. Chapter 1, Galatians. He said, may they be anathema. Hello, somebody. All right. Yes, there is a black theology. Yes, there is a black church, because theology is simply reasoning from the perspective of black people. Native American theology is reasoning from the perspective of Native Americans. Womanist theology is reasoning from the perspective of women. The dilemma is that black people have embraced whiteness, even in our churches. So we are psychologically bifurcated. We're sick. We are a sick people. You got white Jesuses up in your church. And Jesus was not white. He was a brown-skinned, Afro-Asiatic individual. But we got white Jesus in our church. Now, what's an Asian, and he wasn't white, having a white Jesus? He, with long blonde, long auburn hair and a clean robe. Auburn hair, like he just had head and shoulders in his hair and touched it off with a toenail. That is medieval Renaissance art imposed on people when white people engaged in domination of the world. And part of being free is rejecting the psychological shackles of mental slavery that is imposed upon us. All right. Now, let me start off by saying this. If you don't know the difference between white theology and black theology, you don't know the difference between American Bandstand and Soul Train. It's just that simple. Let me ask you a question. What makes Soul Train different from American Bandstand? Huh? You just said a word before it was blackness. Are there 3 C words? You just gave the first one. Culture. Culture. What is culture? Cultivate. Culture. How you've been cultivated, right? The culture is different. They got a Soul Train line. They don't have an American Bandstand. Okay? They got Kool in the Gang. They got Earth, Wind, and Fire, right? They got the Commodores. Okay? So culture is different, right? Do you know you're in a black church because of what? Culture. We worship different, don't we? Call and response. Ooh, Lord. That's our what? That's our culture. And you celebrate your culture, right? Give me another reason, the distinctions, 3 C words between American Bandstand and Soul Train. That's good. The color. And color means something in American society. Color is what's called racialization. Listen carefully. There's a difference between racism and racialization. Racialization is simply, even the white folk who say we're post-racial cannot deny that American society is racialized on the basis of color. What does racialization mean? Color. Racialization means that who you know, where you live, what you experience is based on race. That's called racialization. Who you know, where you live, what you experience, how long you live, how much money you got, it's all based on race. Color. So you're right, Soul Train, color. Don Cornelius has a different color than Dick Clark. And the dancers dance different on Soul Train than they do at American Bandstand. That's 2 C's. Y'all give me 2 more. Color, culture, and the other 2 C's probably are the most important 2 C's. What's the difference between American Bandstand and Soul Train? Man, y'all add more to my C's. Man, you own it. 3rd C. Barnett, write this down because they helping me expand my lecture. Cash. American Bandstand has more cash. Why does American Bandstand have more cash? Why? You're right, but be more specific. Why do they have more cash? Sponsors, Johnson Products in Chicago sponsored Soul Train that came out of Chicago, Illinois. But why do white folk have more cash? Why? Legacy. I know, but why? Why? Give me some control. Here's the reason why. They have more cash than you because they stole your money. You have, listen to me, you have 1/10, you have 1/10 the wealth of white folk. We're going to talk about tomorrow about reparations. You got 1/10. You are 13% of the population. And you control 2.6% of the wealth. That's called disparity. 2.6. If you're 13% of the population, how much wealth should you control? 13%. That's equity. You're 13% of the population. White folk are 60% of the population and control 90-something plus percent of the wealth, over 90%. They have more cash than you. Why do they have more cash than you? Because, listen, they have more cash than you because you were slaves for 246 years. You worked from 1619 to 1865, and didn't get a paycheck. 246 years, they didn't get a paycheck. From dawn to dusk, from can't see in the morning to can't see at night. 246 years. Free labor. Michael Eric Dyson said that if you had one slave, you were rich. You had 10 slaves, you're wealthy. If you have 4 million slaves, you're the United States of America. Because at the end of the Civil War in 1787, the United States was at the bottom of all Western nations economically. The bottom. I am from Kentucky. The reason why there is a Kentucky is because they could not pay the Revolutionary War veterans. So what they did was they pushed the native population out and gave them the soldiers to compensate for the inability to pay them acres of land, like a guy named Daniel Boone. They gave them land like a guy named Samuel Churchill, who passed that land down and his slaves down to his descendants until you started something in Louisville called Churchill Downs. They got millions of acres of Native American. That's how my state got started, and it became Kentucky. And you worked the land for 246 years. That's why, because wealth is this is what wealth is: what you own, what you control, and what you can pass down to your kids. And you can't pass nothing down to your kids because your parents didn't pass nothing down to you, because their parents didn't pass anything down to them, and their parents didn't pass anything down to them because they were not given anything to pass down. And right now we're dealing with the greatest wealth transfer as the baby boomers are passing off the scene in Generation X, and millennials are inheriting the wealth of the baby boomers. And guess what? Your descendants are locked out. The only thing you can pass down to your kids is a funeral bill. So why you broke? Why they got more cash? 24 years of slavery from 1619 to 1865. Plus, once slavery ended, which it never ended, it just evolved. You had another 100 plus years of legalized segregation in our lifetime. It did not end legally until April the 10th, 1968. April the 11th, the last day of legal segregation. How many of you were born, were living April the 10th, 1968? That means legally you were second. The government restricted you from access to opportunity. And then after that, you have another 50 years of benign neglect, and now you got present day political apathy and denial. That's why you don't got no cash. You're broke. Black folk are broke. So the difference between Soul Train, the difference between American Bandstand is color, cash, culture. Give me some more. It's two I'm really thinking about. 2 C words. Here it is. This is very important. Concerns. On the American Bandstand, if they have an interview, it won't be Martin Luther King. It would not be Jesse Jackson. It would not be Roy Wilkins. It would not be Whitney Young. On Soul Train, Don Cornelius would have Jesse Jackson on there with his big fro. Why? Because he had somebody that was speaking about the concerns of Black people. Now I'll give you 4. I'm gonna give you the fifth. Give them to me because y'all helped me with this. 1 was what? Culture. 2, color. 3, 4. Here it is. Control. Control. Governance. Who governs? Who's in control? All right? Now, so give them back to me. Control. Now, what I just defined for you, and you helped me, what I just defined for you is what is called a Black institution. That is what it means to have a Black institution. And there are 7 historic Black institutions. Let me give them to you. Because you will not fix Black America until you fix our institutions that we lost during one of the worst social experiments that has ever hurt our people, integration. Because you went from segregation to desegregation to integration to disintegration. When you should have went from segregation to desegregation to reparations to reconciliation. Let me say it again. You went from segregation to desegregation to integration to disintegration. You should have went from segregation, desegregation, reparations, which means pay me. You cannot steal my car on Monday, get saved on Tuesday, and still drive my car on Wednesday. And we'll see that tomorrow. If you steal my car on Monday and get saved on Tuesday, what you gonna do on Wednesday? Huh? Return the car? Wrong. You're gonna bring my car back with gas, new tires, tune up, and washed. To me, and pay the thing off. Pay it off. God, I love y'all. And put insurance on it. Come on, man. I love Black folks. See, you know what he just did? That spontaneity, that's Black culture. That quick wit, that spontaneity, that's us. Now, there are 7 Black institutions. We get them, here they are, that we must have. Are we through? All right. 1 is the Black church. Now, and those C words, you can be Afro-Saxon church. In other words, you can be Black and white if you don't have these C words. Black church, Black family. You got a Black family. Now, we live in an age of interracial couples. I have no problem. You know, Bible, Ruth married Boaz. That's I want to say racial, interethnic. That was an ethnic, because race is an artificial construction created by white folk in the United States. I have no problem with a Black man who wants to marry a white woman. It's nothing, you know what I mean? Or vice versa. I do have a problem when you think it is an elevation. And that's why I got in trouble earlier this year when I got in trouble, but I don't care, I'm doubling down. When I challenged Deion Sanders, who I'm a president of an HBCU. So when Deion Sanders left Jackson State, which is a Baptist college, has Baptist roots, when he went from Jackson State to Colorado, and I know Colorado starts with the word color, but it's not a school of color. Only 2% of the population in Colorado are Black, and that's because of 1862 and how Lincoln and them gave all them white folk 162 acres of Native American population with the land grants that you didn't get. They got 162 acres. You can get 40 acres. And 40 million white folk today, 42 million white folk right now are the beneficiaries of what took place in 1862, inherited wealth. You didn't get nothing. But I challenged Deion because Deion said this. He said, I'm leaving Jackson State because every coach knows you either get terminated or elevated. I said, wait a minute, dude. Leaving a Black institution to go to a white institution is not an elevation. And leaving Black people to go to white folk and join their churches is not elevation. That's a preference. Now, if it's just a preference, that's okay. But it's not an elevation to leave your people. And that is biblical. If your name is Moses, your behind is supposed to leave Pharaoh's house and go out there and be with your people. Even when they get on your nerves, stay with your people. It's interesting that the children of Israel, the Hebrews always wanted to go back. Moses is the one who said, look, if anybody should be going back, I had privilege to be the Bible teaches that if your name is Esther, you sleeping with the king. But if there's a Haman, you leave the king and you identify with your people. If your name is Nehemiah, you work for the administration of the king. But when you hear the walls of Jerusalem are down, you leave and you go out there to be with your people. If your name is Daniel, even if you're old, you have your windows open up. And the text says his windows were open up and he was praying facing Jerusalem. Praying facing the hood. Right? You don't abandon. If you're Zerubbabel, if you're Ezra, if there's an edict from Cyrus which says you can go back home, you Zerubbabel, you say we're going back to Jerusalem. You stick with your people. If your name is Martin Luther King Jr., I don't care if you have a degree from Boston University, PhD in systematic theology. You forget that. You go back to Memphis to help sanitation brothers. The word becomes sarx, flesh, dwelt among us. So you stay with your people. Black church, Black families, Black schools. I'm the president of an HBCU that is HBCU to its heart, 99.9% Black, with a black agenda, with more Black males than females. Because we need brothers, don't we? That's why we say amen in church, because we need amen. And we sing hymns because we need him. Say amen in here. Say him. All right? So you have black churches, families, schools, businesses, media, black sororic and fraternal organizations, Divine Nine, Black Masons, Qs, Kappas, Alphas, Sigmas. You get it? You got black fraternal sorority organizations, and then you have black civil rights organizations like the NAACP, founded in 1909, the Urban League founded in 1910. Those are the 7. And they are all black in the sense that those institutions, the governance, the control, what makes a black church a black church? It is the only place black people could go where they were in governance. And we love the black church because we in control of it. It was a way of getting away from white folk dominating us 6 days a week. But you came to the church. You could be who you want to culturally. So if you want to shout, they don't do that in the white church. But you could be who you are authentically. You could shout. And shouting is what saved black people. Shouting pushes whenever I lift weights. And when you lift weights, any weight lifter knows that when you lift weight, you always breathe out as you're lifting. You breathe out when you're lifting. So you don't see Bruce Lee just throw a punch. He'll wah, 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 because he's shouting, wah, because that's where you get your energy. So you didn't know it, that you were actually breathing out toxicity and getting energy when you shout. You would, a whole lot of us get healthy if we just start shouting in church a little bit. So these institutions, they are black institutions. Now, let me give you this nursery right now. Help me. Pussycat, pussycat, where have you been? I've been to London to visit the Queen. Pussycat, pussycat, what saw you there? I frightened a little mouse under a chair. What's wrong with the cat? What's wrong with the cat? What is there in England to see? London Bridge, the Queen, because he got an invitation to visit the Queen. The Queen, the guards, Big Ben, Parliament. Pussycat, pussycat, what saw you there? I frightened a little mouse under a chair. So with all there was to see, what did the cat see? The mouse. Why? That's all he wanted to see. That's it. Come on, why? He's a cat, and he can't, as a cat, think of anything. I don't care if there's more to see in London beside a mouse. The nature of the mouse. There's the Queen, there's the Duke of Windsor, there's the Prince of Wales, but all he can see is a mouse, because it's in his nature only to see, amen, the mouse. But there's more to see than the mouse. Now let me ask you a question. Suppose the cat starts writing Sunday school books and starts having classes in theology and Bible study. the cat for the mouse? Let me ask the question again. Suppose the cat starts writing Sunday school books, theological treatises for the mouse. What happens to the mouse, especially if the mouse starts reading it and believing it? What's the mouse going to do? Okay, let me tell you what the mouse is going to try to do. You ready? Climb trees. Look for kitty litter. Licking himself like that, right? Kitty litter. And instead of squeaking, how will the mouse talk? Purr. Why? Because he's being socialized and indoctrinated in catness. So suppose some bad mouse named Malcolm Mouse X comes in and sees mice acting like cats and says, mice lives matter. And suppose the mouse preacher who went to cat theological seminary says, well, ain't the gospel. Well, all of the mice who've been abused by cats saying, I can't go to y'all's church because it's these cats that are putting me in jail, beating me by the police, oppress me on the job, stigmatize me. And when I go to y'all's church, all y'all got is cat pictures. Y'all look like cats, you dress like cats, you talk like cats, and God made me a mouse. So I ain't going until you micerize your Bible studies, your theology, your culture, so that I can feel comfortable. Okay? All right. See, cats are the enemy, right? They're the enemy. And here is, let me give you the theology of a mouse. I wrote it down. If I go to church and your theology doesn't say anything about mouse traps and sticky pads, I'm in the wrong church. You don't expect to go to cat church and the cat preacher talk about mouse traps. Why? Because he doesn't know what a mouse trap is, because he never experienced it. So if I can get the cat to teach the mice what are the existential concerns of theology, I'm going to have the mice engaging in self-sabotage. I don't got to do nothing to them because I got their minds. And I'm going to make them act not in their best interest, but in the best interest. All education, both theological and secular, was created by somebody to advance somebody's interest and to keep a certain group of people subordinate. And that is the reason why you got Ron DeSantis talking against critical race theory and wokeness. And CRT, y'all heard right? You know what that means? Caucasians rejecting truth. If I'm at a mouse church, I don't want cat theology. Now, cat theology is going to try to convince me that the only theology there is cat theology. But cat theology is theology from the perspective of the cat. And let me say this. The question was asked, and I'm through. Is there such thing as black theology? The real question is there anything such as white theology? When I was in seminary, Thomas Cobb would tell you, when I was in seminary, we had what's called J terms. J terms was a week of intensive class that would last 8 hours in the J months, January, June, July. And because they had no black faculty at this racist institution that was founded by Confederates like John Broadus and Basil Manley, who were Baptists. Basil Manley, who started Southern Baptist Seminary in 1859. And when Jefferson Davis, the racist who should have been hung with Robert E. Lee, and the Confederates should have been exiled, and the land should have gone to the slaves. When Jefferson Davis was inaugurated in Montgomery, Alabama in 1861 with the start of the Civil War, there were two people on the platform. One was Alexander Stephens, who was the vice president of the Confederacy, and Basil Manley, who started Southern Baptist Seminary, who owned slaves, said he was a Christian. And they'd have J terms, January, June, July. And in the J terms, they would have black history, black theology classes. But during the whole semester, they had what was called theology. I'm trying not to cuss. Listen to me. It would have been okay had they said white theology. Because all theology and all history is about someone's experience. Question: who is the villain in the Three Pigs? I can't hear you. Who's the villain in the Three Pigs? The wolf. The wolf. And the only reason you answer that question like that is because you have gotten a pig-centric theology. Y'all pigs. Because I went, before I came here, to talk to the wolf, who is in jail. He's dark, y'all do know that. And I asked the wolf to tell me the story of what happened. Because y'all got it from the pigs. And this is what the wolf told me. He said, I'm glad, first of all, you asked me, because no one wants to know my story. In fact, I got some wolves who think like pigs. Because they gone to pig school, pig church, read pig books. So speaking pig Latin, going around saying, oink, 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 and you're a daggone wolf. So I am glad you told me, because I've been vilified in media, in books, in history, in Tarzan movies, in Shirley Temple movies. So I'm glad you asked me. He said, this is what happened. What happened was that I was the first wolf in an all-pig community. I integrated it. And because them pigs had been socialized with white supremacy and had been taught that blacks moving into your neighborhood was a contagion to your wealth. They rejected me. One day I had a cold. I was sick. The stores were closed. I went to my pig neighbor's house and I knocked on the door and I said, I got a cold. Said, will you let me in? And the pig, seeing me being different because they're xenophobic, said, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. I said, I'm cold. And I wasn't huffing and puffing. That's his perspective. I wasn't huffing and puffing. I sneezed. And because he had a house of straw, the straw fell down and killed him. And since he was dead, I said, there's no need of wasting the pig feet, the chitlins, the ham hocks, and the Joe bacon. They called the cops on me. They called the police on me, and they wrote it up. The pigs gave their version of what happened, never heard my version, and it got perpetuated. And because it got perpetuated that way, I got vilified. And he said, there's not going to be any liberation until we do history and theology from the perspective of the wolf. And you can't expect white folk to do theology from your perspective because rattlesnakes don't commit suicide. This thing, hear me, this thing in America, wake up. And it's interesting that I'm having this discussion with you on the day when the Pope of white supremacy is going to court. Because this thing is about power and money. White folk can't give you nothing but stolen money. And don't act like you ain't broke, because you are, because you're black, and it ain't your fault. You built this country, and that's what my book is about. You built this country. And you built it. And I have a acrostic, and I'm through, called pimps. When I say you built it, I'm talking about you who are ex-Negroes. Because now you got people of color, I, immigrants, M, minorities, P, physically challenged, S, sexual orientation. And those groups are trying to tap into your unique justice claim. Because you have a justice claim as a descendant of Jim Crow, Jane Crow, enslaved people that no one else has. You shouldn't have to pay for nothing. And they are not going to talk about what I'm talking to you about in the white church. And if I talk too much about it because you've been a mouse that's been socialized by cats, y'all gonna get mad at me. But I don't care. Well, let me close here and let's have a dialogue. Maybe there's some questions.
right, let's say thank you to Dr. Cosby for I dare not put a label on it because I don't want to limit what that was for us, but thank you.
Bless you, though.
Thank you. Now you